I think we will go. I, I think I will. Okay. Good afternoon. We're going to kick off. My name is Sohail Aziz, and welcome to the World Summit AI Metaverse track. It's going to be probably the most exciting track, so hold on to your seatbelts, strap in, and I just want to make sure that at the end of this, you guys put in the votes in your app for all the speakers, and that we get the best rating. Okay, so that's the one thing I ask from you for the rest of the afternoon. So first off, Sohail Aziz, I run Accenture Song for France, the Netherlands, and Belgium. Song is a part of Accenture. We are a creative design and digital agency that primarily focuses on the evolving customer needs and how to most effectively address them for our clients. Accenture, as you know, has also been focused on the metaverse. We launched something called the Metaverse Continuum Business Group over a year ago, and that's really focused on helping our clients having to think through what are the implications of the metaverse, and more importantly, how to address total enterprise reinvention as this technology and this concept starts to impact their lives, their stakeholders' lives, and consumers' lives in general. So I wanted to just maybe take a couple of minutes to sort of set the stage. The term metaverse was invented, I don't know if there's anyone in the audience that knows this, but it was in 1992 by Neil Stephenson, right? Iconic sci-fi book at the time, Snow Crash. I'm quite sure at least half the team, half the group here has probably read it. If not, you should read it. And the reality is that the metaverse as it was designed then, or at least conceptualized then, is still pretty much how it's being conceptualized today. A space, an environment where you actually bring a sense of belonging, a mix of virtual reality, mixed reality, extended reality, to really drive a sense of engagement, but also hopefully a sense of value. Now, one of the things I wanted to call out is that I think according to Citibank, about 2 months ago, released a report. Their view is that the metaverse-related industries will generate, I'll say this once, I might say it twice, 13 trillion, I repeat, $13 trillion of business by 2030, right? So good place to be because I think this is an opportunity moment for all of us. But at the same time, an hour a day a week is the amount of time that the Gen Zers are actually spending in the metaverse today. So that has a significant impact on the future of humanity and obviously the future of society. Kicking things off for today, we will have a panel discussion, and the subject will be about the augmented and virtual metaverse, and what will they look like. We have a fantastic line of speakers. They're right over here, so if you guys come on up to talk about this, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the metaverse. Marlowe's Pomp, Elsa Labs, and the NL AI Coalition Lead, and the panelists, which happens to include myself. So
Yes.
take a seat.
Welcome. Is Hina online? Yes, you are. Great. Well, let's get started. My name is Marloes. I work at the Netherlands AI Coalition and the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. And there I'm an advisor on Web3, the metaverse, and decentralized autonomous organizations. Today, I have the honor to moderate this panel. Beverly, she couldn't make it. She was on the slides. She was not feeling well. Hina is joining online. And Anand, you already introduced yourself, but... Oh, sorry, Sohail. Maybe Anand, you can start with a short introduction. And also the first question. How will the metaverse change our life and our economy, or isn't it? And what is your favorite use case for the metaverse?
Okay, well, I'll start by introducing myself. My name's Anant. I'm the CEO of a consultancy called Matter Reform. We're a design consultancy, and we do three things. We do brand strategy, innovation consulting, and digital experience, and we do it primarily for luxury brands. My interests are really human-to-computer interaction, interface design, and also human-to-brand interaction, right? So the methods that brands use to create more compelling customer experiences and marketing strategies, and that's the hat I wear, I guess, which in many ways is not so different to the hat you wear. So the question, how will the metaverse impact life? I think it's impossible not to start the answer to this question by, but really, like, what is the metaverse? Right? It's like it's the Collins dictionary most popular word of the year. And actually, only the other week, Tim Cook pointed out that if you ask most people what the metaverse is, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you. But he did espouse the virtues of augmented reality, and I guess we'll come to that difference between VR and AR later. I think the metaverse, for me, to answer this question, I think that the impact of VR, immersive VR experiences in an enterprise context, right, in healthcare, digital twins for cities that aid infrastructure planning, the office environment, and a lot of Accenture have moved, they've built their own metaverse to aid the consultant-to-consultant interaction. I almost class that not really as the metaverse, but rather the enterprise application of virtual reality. The metaverse I see, largely as a consumer-facing experience, and if I'm to be honest, I think it's quite low fidelity. The processing power doesn't exist for more than a certain number of people to engage with each other in real time at the moment, resulting in the low fidelity experiences of things like Horizon or Decentraland. For me, the metaverse, you asked for a couple of good use cases, and I think there are very few good use cases currently. Yeah. I'm not saying that won't change, but currently I think there are very few good use cases. And, Mark Zuckerberg on a recent Joe Rogan podcast sort of espoused the value of, the sort of Soapstone Comedy Club and, various other sort of virtual events where people can engage with each other. But the reality is that the quality is quite poor. I think it's important to note that the majority of metaversal interactions currently are, they're gaming, And when considering your metaversal strategy, it's worth noting that the people active in the metaverse are largely gamers, so treat them like players.
It's also Generation Z is the first generation who is raised gaming first. So they spend more time in games than on social media or wherever. So it's also for that, it's a good to have a better understanding of the gaming industry.
I mean, gaming is predicted to be. I mean, gaming is already a $300 billion industry. It's predicted to grow larger than TV, cinema, and like other forms of entertainment combined. Yeah. Right. So where we draw influence from, where we once drew influence from celebrity, as popularized by cinema or prolific musical artists, we're now going to start drawing influence from games, and that has a big impact on brands.
Well, thank you. Hina, for you the same question.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hina Dikshit, and I'm currently leading AI investments at Samsung Next, and I focus on metaverse investments as well. A little bit about Samsung Next. So Samsung Next is private equity venture capital arm of Samsung, and we have invested in some very cool companies in the metaverse, which include the Yuga Labs, Alchemy, Ready Player Me, Spatial, Dang Bank, Nifties, and there's so many more. And before Samsung Next, I was at Apple, and I led various features there for 8 years. And these projects included AI, Xcode, security, accounts, iCloud, you name it, and I must have worked on it. So going back to the question now, for me, the metaverse is an ecosystem which is very complex. There's a rapidly emerging market which is yet to be covered and comprehensively mapped correctly. And the future generation, they have their whole world in the virtual space right now. They play games there, they meet people there, and then they tend to also, like, kind of like not confined to the traditional, like, definition of metaverse, which is to meet people or just to play games. They try to share experiences there. They have their meetups there, like meetings. So in that regards, like, I think metaverse has a very important role to play. And for me, my favorite use case would be the blockchain technology. In the use case for the metaverse, which has given birth to a new type of economic system. And it's not only, like, applicable to NFTs, but it is also, like, more than cryptocurrencies and NFTs. The fintech itself, like, which kind of lies on DAO now, it holds various advantages over the current economic system that we have. And currently, we live in a global village where people are traveling from one country to another country. They're making transactions like all over the world. And being able to use your digital assets and money anywhere in the world without worrying about, like, exchange rates, recession, inflation in that particular region, those are some of the very few advantages, like, that metaverse has, made the investors pouring in their money into it. So I want to, like, see more exploration of, like, the blockchain technology in the metaverse, just not only, like, pertaining to fintech, but also it goes beyond fintech as well. And the metaverse more uniquely would be built on top of decentralization. So the layer has to be that. And there are so many different infrastructure, like, tools and frameworks that need to come into play. And we have already started seeing some amazing companies like raise decent amount of funding. Space and Time, which is one of my portcos in which I invested. So they are basically data warehouse for blockchain and, like, for decentralization. So they can be very good example, and they recently raised funding at a valuation of $300 million within 6 months of starting. So I think blockchain technology is my personal favorite there.
Thank you. I fully agree, of course. But Sohel, for you another question. Why are we talking today about the metaverse? We have explored AR, mixed reality, VR for years now. Is it is it because of Facebook or Apple or Accenture, or is there something
Well,
else going on?
it's a great question. I mean, I think that, and going back to what also Anand was saying, I think we've been working with sort of mixed virtual extended realities for over 10, 15 years now, even longer. Because you talked about human, computer interactions, that's going back 30, 40 years, right? So the reality is, I think it's a function of the acceleration of digital disruption and all of that coming together faster than ever before. There's always a saying that things will not get as slow as fast as they go today, right? So the reality is that all of this is happening right now. And this confluence of the technologies, the underlying infrastructure, and also the expectations around societal engagement using these new forms is really starting to take a new turn. So, one of the things we talked about earlier was an interesting use case. I think that we're starting to be able to leverage the technology to do things that we couldn't do before.
Yeah.
And I think there are aspects of that that are quite interesting, not just in terms of engagement with consumers and brands, but also from a societal perspective. One of my favorite cases is something called Favela X, and which is a game that actually we built with a social justice organization in Brazil to help individuals and the youth of Brazil today to actually understand what poverty means and how do you actually increase your worldview and understand your worldview on poverty. So I think there's a perspective of the acceleration of tech, the recognition that big tech needs to become more responsible, and the fact that we need to rethink the space a lot more than ever before. And clearly, Oculus Quest, the new launches, all of that is all that is doing is just further, I guess, putting fuel behind the hype. But I clearly don't believe it's hype. I'm far more hopeful, and we talked about cautious or positive skepticism earlier. But I think there is a true goodness in the opportunity here. I think it's a function of how we as humanity deal with it and sort of organize around it.
And it's not only you are convinced, but your organization is as well. We talked a bit about onboarding the employees.
Absolutely. So Accenture, as I was mentioning, we launched our Metaverse Business Group a couple of years ago. And over the last 12 months, and this was fundamentally accelerated by COVID and the pandemic that hit us. So we've always been using Teams and virtual collaboration technologies. But we found out that we need to sort of build the culture and actually have something far more immersive and create a space of belonging for our people. So over the last year, we've actually onboarded 150,000 new employees into our own metaverse. Our version of it, or our instance of it, if I should call it that. Probably not version. Instance is probably the right technical term. Which is called One Park, which is part of something called the Nth Floor. And there we introduce people, we build communities, we do the recruitment, we have all of our training and enablement, and all of that is being done there. So we're significantly investing in this as well. And from the perspective of the enterprise first, if I can use that term, and how do we actually help organizations actually leverage the technology to do more for their employees, for their stakeholders, and also for end customers.
Yeah. Anand, you're more focused on the high-end brands. You're more on the enterprise solutions. Can you provide some examples of how these brands are exploring the metaverse? And can you also talk a bit about the difference between the augmented reality, the fully virtual metaverses?
Sure. I guess, again, to break down metaverse, let's answer this in three components. For luxury brands, in a very traditional sense, the elevated content experience that is increasingly becoming table stakes as a result of the movement to the metaverse is obviously great to show off the products more effectively. And it's obviously great from a store advisor perspective, right? You can have something that is a more elevated brand experience than a chat and a website, which is rubbish, let's be honest. That's very basic, I guess. The movement into dematerialized products clearly represents an enormous commercial opportunity, particularly for luxury brands, because luxury brands have significant brand equity already, right? So to transfer that brand equity into products that, let's be honest, they cost very little to make, that they're digital. That represents a very high margin commercial opportunity. What is luxury? It's a product that has intrinsic value. It's determined by craftsmanship and product and quality of product and design, and it has perceived value, right? And the thing that bridges the intrinsic value and the perceived value is the brand, and the brand is ultimately a representation of an individual's personality, right? We as adults, we all think we're above status, and we all think we're above the need to replay stories, but the truth is the stories that we tell are a form of social capital. Brands that represent something and are meaningful, that we choose to invest in, say something about who we are. Now, capitalizing on that brand equity and pollinating it into products in the metaverse is a very obvious short-term opportunity for luxury brands. But if not done correctly, it will very, very quickly erode the equity that they do have. For me, when moving into digital products or NFTs or developing in-game assets that can be purchased, it needs to go back for luxury brands to the truest artistic expression of what that brand stands for. You're not governed by physics. It's the catwalk, right? But applied to every premium industry. So for me, there's obviously opportunity there, but need to tread cautiously. And then the last, I guess, goes back to the point I made at the beginning, and that is, yeah, gaming is a big, and very, very important area for luxury brands to consider. Now, what's interesting about gamers is that they actively participate, right? They are part of a community. They put effort in to achieve status and to, achieve a goal that, that puts them in some sort of hierarchy that is like attractive, right? It's the carrot that makes you invest your effort. Now, when you put your brand at the center of that value exchange, you develop more meaningful relationships between the individual and the brand. To the old adage of the hero's journey, without tension, there is no triumph, right? People are investing in the experience, and what they take from it is more meaningful and long-lasting.
Yeah.
So developing in-game assets and a gaming strategy is important, but treating the end user like a player, and not as a metaversal participant for me is important. And it's something Nike have always done very well. Your level of proficiency in a game unlocks different levels of customization for your digital sneakers. Yeah, and that, of course, that you wear that as a status symbol.
Yeah.
So I think those three things are important from my perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, before I
yeah. We are running out of time, so I will continue with Ina. This is an AI conference. What is the role of AI in the metaverse, and what is needed at this moment from a technical perspective?
So a lot of interesting developments are ongoing, and we recently saw Imogen from Google, where you can create a video from an image. Then Jan Lippkuhn, he shared make a video from Meta, where you can use text and you can generate a video using the text. Um, Apple recently launched Texturify, which is a GAN-based method that leverages a 3D shape data set of an object and kind of learns to reproduce the distribution of appearances observed in the real world and real images to generate these high quality textures that can be imparted into metaverse itself. So a lot of cool work is actually happening in the metaverse, and with the advent of neural radiance field and 3D GANs, the avatars as well as inanimate objects, they are looking more human and real than ever. I do want to tap into how giants are coming together, and how a lot of research work is actually happening in just scanning the 3D spaces. That is another very important aspect of metaverse. You need to be able to quickly scan a surrounding around you, or create a surrounding in the metaverse by quickly using your phone or something, like an easy edge device. So Apple, again, they released Room Plan in 2022, and now this is just a simple Swift API. It just uses camera and lidar scanner on the iPhone and iPad, and it kind of creates a a 3D floor mapping for the room itself, including dimensions, the type of furniture you have. Plus, the other thing that can be done using AI in the metaverse is use of federated learning to create synthetic data sets. And why do we need these synthetic data sets? Because if we want to populate metaverse, we'll need characters walking around us. We'll need very relatable objects around us in order to give that real feeling. And that's where federated learning can jump in creation of these synthetic data sets, because it preserves privacy. And from NLP point of view, a lot of work is happening in actually using unsupervised learning of controllable generative sequence models that have the capability to extract text and replicate the style of specific writing examples, including audiobooks or different voices, including auto completion or auto correction. So that is also going to be pretty important, if you think you want to add sounds to a gaming experience in the metaverse, right? There, or you want characters around in the metaverse to be able to interact coherently and cohesively with the current avatar, or the person itself who's experiencing the VR. it would be very interesting to see like what kind of like chat prompts come up, right? Like how does the conversation flow? It could be as simple as asking the way or where to go, where is the concert happening. So GPT-3 and like there are so many other chatbot and NLU related examples which are playing very crucial role in the AI for building the metaverse. uh, and I would like to add like one more thing. Not just like pertaining to creation of these experiences, metaverse is also about like the data itself. So how the data will flow around in the metaverse, uh, that is a very crucial piece, and that's where AI can play like a significant role as well. Like making sure the data is going to be private, making sure how do we serve like ads in metaverse. They don't need to be like the way they were with some of the giants earlier, but how can we improve on that? How can we make sure like privacy is still there and still like we can generate revenue through ads, and how do we give a bite of that revenue back to the users, because hey, like it's their data.
Yeah.
So AI is playing major role in all these things for
Yes.
sure.
Well, you already mentioned privacy and regulation. The European Commission announced that they would like to regulate the metaverse. What is your opinion about this, and what should be the main focus from this regulation?
You first.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I think a couple of things on this. Um, pe- pe- People idolize this notion of a democratic, decentralized future. I think for the wrong reasons quite often. It's like, firstly, big tech don't want anything other than anonymized data to work out what to do next, so it's not necessarily that bad if they have the data. That's just my opinion. But secondly, with decentralization also comes the lack of onus and responsibility, and I think it's when people have no personal responsibility to an avatar that's anonymous, I don't necessarily think it brings out the best in humanity. You only have to look at comment sections on blogs and forums and some of the recent tragedies in the UK news anyway to see that it brings out the Joker in people, actually. And I think that needs a level of regulation, frankly. And then there's also, I think, as part of this report, there's been this notion that the metaverses should be taxed, and there should be some of the money should come back basically to local government and I think that's not such a bad thing either. I think if we're enticing people to live in virtual domains, it's not such a bad thing to use that money to invest in the physical world which we live in and enjoy.
Yeah. Well, would you like to add?
I sort of agree pretty much wholeheartedly with Anant. I think the reality is that like any new emerging technology, and if you see what's happened with big tech and you see what's happened with the internet, I think we were a bit slow to catch up with regulation. Going back to the 70s, going back to the 80s. I think there's also a perspective on whether we're going to slow down innovation. It's hard to slow down innovation, I think, generally. So I think it's a good thing. I think the question is, what is the it's a means to an end. So what are we trying to achieve? So one is about having not just a sustainable metaverse, but a responsible one. And I think going back to what Bertrand is saying in his blog article, is that he wants to have the values of Europe represented in this virtual space. And I think that's good. I think that's about inclusivity. It's about being open. It's about being human, and not being in any shape or form being in a space where there's predatory behavior. So that's, I think, is good. I think he's also trying to set the stage on, and I'm not going political on this one, but the stage around the need to share infrastructure. Because the reality is, when you look at the metaverse, and you brought it up right up front, it's quite patchy, right? Because there's not enough infrastructure, and there's not enough bandwidth and resilience to be able to provide a uniform experience to everyone, right? And if you're going to be making this big, if you're going to be making this for humanity, I think we need to be open and inclusive and have that same experience for everybody. The reality is, they always say that the future is here now, but it's just distributed unevenly. That's fundamentally what's happening with the metaverse, right? So in my 17-year-old son's room where he's got like an optical fiber connection, he's having a great time on the metaverse. The reality is that's not the same throughout the rest of the world. So it's good to sort of level the playing field, make sure that big tech is investing collectively for a bigger goal. And last but not least, I think we were very late on the notion of taxing the internet. So I think it's about time to maybe rethink how we should not, maybe the word's not tax, but the word is about the redistribution of wealth, specifically to be able to aid and support these initiatives.
These common standards, I think.
Absolutely.
But look, the EU can't even get everyone to use USB-C. Like Apple and Google are bickering over common messaging formats. I mean, if we can't develop interoperability standards at that level, I think it's going to be very challenging when there's plethora of metaverses, whatever the plural of metaverse, metaversi.
Metaverses.
Metaverses.
Well, we are running out of time. Hina, thank you for joining us today. Anand, thank you. And Sohail, the floor is yours.
I guess so. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for joining me on stage.